Hi, everyone. Kay Berkner here today with Dr. Tom Phelan, author and creator of 123 Magic and the author of The Manager Mom Epidemic. Dr. Phelan, welcome.
Good morning, Kay.
How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Another beautiful spring morning.
It is. It's been a little chilly, but I think it's supposed to be warming up. I'm very excited about that. So today we are going to talk about a topic that we first addressed a little over a month ago, and that is childhood obesity. And I just want to clarify as we start, when we're talking about obesity, we're not talking about kids' body size or kids' body shape. When we say obesity, we very literally mean an excessive accumulation of fat that is associated with serious health risks, right? So there is no intention to shame anyone because of any sort of body size. We're just talking about a health concern that is childhood obesity. So Dr. Phelan, can you tell us about the increase in childhood obesity over the last couple decades? Like, what does that look like by the numbers?
Well, it looks like about in the last 40 years, a tripling of the rate of childhood obesity to where it's about 18% of the 2 to 17-year-olds now. And that's just a lot of kids. And when you look at what's been going on in those years, certainly you've had, some of the core things are, in increase in intake of useless calories or not so nutritional calories, and a decrease in activity, increase in sedentary activity. And interesting because you're talking about, think back to the onset of TV or the arrival of TV, late 50s and 60s, since then, and then computers and screens and all this kind of stuff. And what's happened in the last year is the whole thing has been accelerated by COVID. Because you got kids, pediatricians are saying, these kids, we haven't seen them for a while. Now they're coming back and we're seeing huge increase. The kids that were obese are worse. Kids that were normal weight are now overweight or obese and so on. So it's like a perfect storm, I guess, right now.
Yeah, the last year has been really hard. And I know, particularly during the first period of lockdown in the US here, childcare was not available, but a lot of parents don't have the ability to take 2.5, 3 months off of work. So parents were trying to manage, one or both parents in the household working, whether that was working from home while caring for children or trying to kind of coordinate childcare while parents had to work outside the home. And, my family included, we were like, you know what? You've got a meeting, I've got a meeting. Okay, guys, you can watch an episode of television, right? So it was, and I think this past year has been unusual. And I don't think that we're trying to express any judgment of anyone who let their kid watch a lot of Netflix this past year. I know that I let my kid watch a lot of Netflix the last year, but what you're speaking to is that does have an impact, right? Like that was kind of a thing that we did to sort of get through. But now that's had a health implication for some kids. And beyond sort of COVID and the acceleration of screen time, sort of out of necessity to some extent, what are some of the other challenges that parents in our society face overall when it comes to obesity?
Well, the one you're just talking about is the screens are the best babysitters in the world. I mean, that applies to COVID or not COVID. A couple other ways of looking at it are, one is an increase in what they call FAFH, or food away from home. And so people are eating, fast food more, and that means more salt, it means more starch, it means more sugar, it means a lot of different things. And it's just hard to eat healthy away. It's hard to imagine a place where you can get a green vegetable, for example, that's fast food. It doesn't exist, I don't think. There may be a place that somewhere. But the other thing is, or another factor is what they call SSBs, or sugar sweetened beverages, so which often goes along with food away from home. So you have these kind of societal trends or environmental trends that are definitely aggravating the thing. And one of the problems with this stuff is the food away from home and the sugar sweetened beverages. One of the problems is the stuff tastes so good. It's incredible. Some people believe that's a true version of a socially sanctioned addiction is to eat this kind of food because it tastes so darn good that it's hard to not eat it.
Absolutely. I have my Coke right here, my sugar sweetened beverage right there. So when it comes to obesity in kids, how can obesity impact a child's self-esteem?
Well, one of the more upsetting pieces of research that I've ever seen was from a psychologist named Susan Harder at the University of Denver, and she found that there was a huge correlation, or actually the biggest predictor, let me put it this way, of global self-esteem was perceived physical appearance. And this was for all ages, 12 countries. I mean, this is not what we want to hear. And so for a lot of kids who are overweight or worse, there's going to be a big association between self-esteem, and it is associated sometimes with bullying or with social rejection, and you get into a vicious cycle sometimes because the kid might go to school not get along well with the other kids, partly because of the overweight situation, and then they go home and they do the comfort food thing to make themselves feel better because what happened at school, then that aggravates the weight problem, and we go round and round in circles. So unfortunately, there's a big association. There's also an association with overweight and cognitive problems. There may be an association with overweight and ADHD. So there's a number of things that can affect self-esteem.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you suggest parents say to a child who is feeling low about their weight, whether that child has sort of determined on their own that they don't like the way that they feel or that they look, or who perhaps is getting bullied at school because of their weight? What should a parent say when, if a child comes to them and says, mom, so and so called me fat today?
Yeah. Well, what you don't want to do is try and shut them up. This is the time to listen, not to shut them up. Say, well, oh, don't worry about it. Or he's a mean kid anyway. We don't like him, and don't even think about it, or whatever. You want to listen and say, what was that like for you? How did that, why do you think they were teasing you, and so on. And then you could say, is this ever a concern of yours? How do you feel about how you look? How do you feel about your weight? And see what they say. And then you could say something like, do you ever think we might want to do something about that? And do you ever feel like you'd like to change that situation? And if so, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. So, you called out two tactics that you talk about in the 1, 2, 3 Magic book: the sympathetic listening, and then sort of shared problem solving as a way of bonding with your kids. So not only can you sort of turn this experience that has been, painful or challenging for your kid into a positive bonding experience for the two of you.
Yes.
So then, if a child says that they would like to be doing something healthier, or if you as a parent kind of look at the health of your family and decide that you'd like to get your family on a healthier path, what can parents be doing to help get their kids on that healthier path?
Well, this is where the rubber meets the road, actually, and this is the hard part, and this is really hard. But the first thing is you have to have an overall view of looking at it. Just as you were saying, we're going to look at this as a family. It's not something I'm going to do to you, my child, because the research is showing very, very clearly that a child's risk of obesity and overweight has so much to do with the parents being overweight or obese. In fact, if you have two parents that are obese, your chances of becoming obese as an adult are 13.6 times greater than the average child. I mean, that's a tremendous thing. So what we have to do, what we're going to do is we're going to make the problem worse, because now we have to deal with not just one person, but the whole family. But it can be done, but that's about the only way to do it. You can't single out a child and say, we're going to do this to you, and so on. You need the whole family to get on board, and usually more than one person is going to have an issue. So we need to look at, what are some of the things we can do. One of the simplest things you can do, you can start eating breakfast. 20-30% of people skip breakfast, and evidence suggests that's a good way to put on weight. It's to not eat a healthy breakfast. We're going to increase exercise. What kind of exercise can we tolerate in this family? Maybe you need to, whenever you get on the phone and you're talking to somebody, you need to walk when you're talking on the phone. I call that phone walking. It's a great way to burn off calories. We need to look at eating at home more. There's a whole lot of different things, but they have to be kind of agreed on. And I think when you're going to do this as a family, you need to start with one of our tactics that you were alluding to before, and that's the family meeting. We need to sit down and talk about, how are we going to reduce the screen time around here?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Shonda in the comments here. Hi, Shonda, who is noting that, should support her child and her family as a whole, offering healthy options. And yes, speaking to the family meeting, you have to be consistent and you have to be all hands on deck about this. Yep. So, that means parent, like whatever adults are living in the house, if you're a single parent, if you have a partner or a spouse, if you have grandparents living with you as well, making sure that everyone is on board and understands why you're doing it, right?
Yeah, they do. And that's one of the things, they say restrictive diets don't work. So you want to still be eating, but you want to eat more vegetables, for example, less, salty fat and that kind of thing. So the fact of involving the rest of the family has a good and a bad part to it. The difficult part to it is now we got more people whose behavior we want to change. The good part to it is if you're focusing on the child, again, if their environment changes, you don't have the chips and the candy sitting around at home. There's no question of eating them because they're not there. Then we have everybody on board and everybody exercising maybe together, which is a great thing to do. Then we have some advantages there because the social environment is a very powerful influencer of body weight and health.
Absolutely. And lots of fun ways that you can involve kids in that, right? Like when the kids say, we do this at our house, when the kids, they walk in the door from daycare and they say, oh, can I play video games? Instead, giving them the opportunity to choose an outdoor activity you're going to do. Oh, do you want to go out and play soccer or do you want to walk to the park? Or one of the things that you talk about in the manager mom epidemic, particularly for older kids, is getting kids to help with things that make a difference to the family, right? They're actually contributing in an impactful way. And one of the examples of that is meal planning and meal prep. And so if you're looking at planning healthier dinners, like what a fun project to say, okay, like let's think about what kinds of things might we want to try. Let's go to the grocery store and pick out one new vegetable to try and look up a recipe, and then let's make that together. It doesn't have to feel like a chore. It definitely, I think, takes some work on the parents' part because, anytime you're trying to get a kid to do something new that they may not necessarily be excited about, right? But being able to engage them in a way that is fun and, like you said, not restrictive. And it's not like we're all going to start doing CrossFit training together, but even just a walk around the block, if you're just going out for a walk or learning to ride a bike or walking the dog, something like that, to just get out and get moving a little, start on the path to healthier habits.
Well, you're right. And one of the things you mentioned in there about cooking with the kids, we'll take that one step further and imagine you have an 8-year-old or 9-year-old or 10-year-old, 11-year-old, they can cook a meal for a family of 4 by themselves. So the first step is you cook it together. The second step is they choose the menu, they go shopping maybe with you, and you come home and they cook the meal and you're not in the kitchen. Now that's going to motivate that child to eat what they cooked and not necessarily more than that, but it's a great step toward weight reduction, and it's a great step toward mom having a little more free time.
Absolutely. And can have really terrific implications for that kid later on in life, right? Because then they go to college or they move out on their own and they have all of this practice planning and preparing meals that are healthy.
Yeah, they're going to be cooking for everybody in the dorm.
This is terrific. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Phelan. This has really been great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you know someone who needs to hear this, please feel free to tag them in the comments or share this video. And if you haven't already, head on over to 123magic.com, get signed up for our weekly newsletter. We send out weekly parenting tips, downloadables, and more. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.